something that is powerful and transformative. This mystical, magical heart that we have, this thing that beats inside of us, that connects us with each other, that transcends our bodies, our minds, our cultures, our lives. It's vast, it's radiant, it's awake. It's the place where heaven and earth meet in sacred union. This mystical, magical heart. So this idea of mysticism, for me, mysticism is having the direct experience of God. It's that idea of having a relationship with the divine, of actually knowing, not all of it, but certainly knowing it a little differently than I did before I had the experiences. It's having God be alive in my life. And you all know I like a little bit of magic. For me, magic is that idea of what happens when I have that spiritual realization, and then I watch the fruit of it. I watch how it magnificently unfolds in ways that we couldn't even imagine. Rainbows, people that come into our lives, experiences that we have that seem beyond any kind of effort to make it happen. To me, that's the magical aspect of it. And so today we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to continue that talk that I did last week about love thy neighbor a bit and move that into that idea of this mystical, magical heart that we have. But first I want to start with our science of mind principles. In 1927, our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote what he called the Declaration of Principles. And these were, I never can remember if it's 10 or 12, because there's also the core concepts, and I get them confused. But anyway, there's a slew of these ideas. This is the first one, and this one has stuck with me more than anything else. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, that one indestructible, absolute, self-existent cause, that one manifests itself in, through, and as all creation, but it's not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of the living Spirit. So what this means is that God is in everything. God moves through everything. God shows up as everything. There is not one spot, as they say, where God is not. There's nothing that is not part of that being, that energy, that universal intelligence that we call God or Spirit or the Almighty or whatever word you want to use. It doesn't matter. I have a friend that uses Howard. It doesn't matter. You know, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It doesn't matter what you call it. I have another friend that calls it Ta, T-A, which stands for the all. In fact, that friend wrote our opening song, Brand New Life, Melissa Felipe, and she calls Spirit Ta. Because they have a personal, deep relationship with it. They have that mystical connection with Spirit where they refer to it in ways that mean something to them, that come alive inside of them. And so that's what all of this is about. Now, this principle here, this declaration of principle that Ernest Holmes wrote is about one thing, and that is oneness. That there is nothing outside of God. Nothing exists outside of God. Nothing exists outside of what we call this universal intelligence, this Spirit. Nothing exists outside of God. That's the core part of this talk here. So let's get into that mystical dimension of the heart. How does that relate to mysticism here? And again, mysticism is at its core the direct experience of God. It's having a relationship with God. It's having an experience of it. It's having some challenge in your life and seeing something happen that goes beyond any explanation because Spirit is moving through you to bring about a result. This is not done through doctrine or rules about how to be religious or spiritual or anything else. It can happen sometimes when we're studying the doctrine, when we're learning the principles, when we're figuring out what that means and how we apply that. It can come through some of the rituals that we do, but it doesn't necessarily have to. It can come from an intellectual understanding that becomes embodied inside of us. It is the presence coming alive inside of us. Whatever way we choose to practice it, that's what's happening here. And the heart is the portal through which this experience happens. The heart is how we feel it. Oftentimes, I think of this heart space here. And when I go into meditation, I take my awareness into my heart space, because for me, that's where everything is active, in this area right here. When we enter into this mystical heart, we're not seeking for an intellectual understanding of God, but we're seeking for a more direct experience of it, having it come alive inside of us. This is where we feel God, we breathe God, we allow God to breathe through us, and we then become God in expression. Just like it said in that first principle, God is in, through, and as all creation. So let's talk about that love thy neighbor as thyself. Again, I gave you a paper last week about how that expression transcends religions. It's found in many different faith traditions and so forth. If you didn't get a copy of it, they're back on the table by Kaylee and Kelly back there. And so as Justin talked about Joel Goldsmith here, he and I have a share of love for Joel Goldsmith, who is a contemporary of Ernest Holmes. His belief system is a little different, but it's very much, there's a lot of parallels in Science of Mind and what Joel called the infinite way. But in this, Joel Goldsmith thought that this principle was so powerful. He has over 70 books written. Very prolific writer, speaker, teacher. He chose 8 chapters out of those more than 70 books to be the most important chapters a person could read. And the number 1 chapter in all of that comes from the book Practicing the Presence, and the title of the chapter is Love Thy Neighbor. In all of his years of studying, in his deep contemplation of spirit, and this man could sit and meditate for 12 hours at a time, in all of the work that he did, understanding and having that mystical experience of God, this is what he found was the most important thing. Because in that idea of love thy neighbor as thyself is the idea of oneness. And if we are not loving thy neighbor as thyself, then we are not believing in that power of oneness. We look out and see other. If we look out and see other, there's a sense of separation going on. And so when we love our neighbor as ourselves, we're not doing some kind of moral duty. It's not because it's the right thing to do. It's because we are expressing a divine principle. We are understanding that oneness is at the heart of everything when we do that. Our founder, Ernest, put this in the Science of Mind, his textbook, the book that we use as the basis for most of our classes. He said, to love thy neighbor as thyself is to know that the same life which lives in you lives in all people, that there is but one life, one presence, and one power. To know that the same life that is in me lives in everyone else. It's actually easier to do intellectually than it is to put into practice sometimes. To understand that. Sometimes it's difficult to look out at something that we find abhorrent, something that just, is beyond our comprehension of how anybody could do that, and think, this too is God. It becomes tough, but it becomes the most fundamental practice that we can do. Because every time we look out at something and we see other, we are believing that there is something outside of God. In the old Christian Bible, they talked about the devil. That the devil was something that was outside of God. The master teacher Jesus even says it for himself. Thou could have no power over me unless it was given to thee by God. Nothing exists outside of God. So this idea of the devil or the evil being out there and active is a human concept, not a divine principle. Yes, it is true that people do awful things. Our task is to remember that somewhere deep inside of them, the presence of God is right there. They have yet to have the realization of it. So at all times, it's our opportunity to realize it for them. And if we realize it for people who are doing things that we can't tolerate, then perhaps an opening will happen within them where they begin to realize it for themselves. And that, folks, is how we change the world. One person at a time, one conscious belief at a time. Now, as I said, this is not an easy practice to do. I sit in front of the social media or the news and sometimes get really worked up over what I'm seeing. Sometimes. Depends on the moment, depends on the news channel. And when I can take a moment and breathe and remember these principles, then I can step back out of my anger, out of my fear, out of my intolerance for that situation. And remember, this too is God. And maybe there's an opening that'll happen. We know that all of this transcends any location, any time, any place. Based on the work of quantum physics, we know that there is no limit to where our thoughts can happen. Our thoughts can affect things. So my job is always, the moment I become aware that I'm having thoughts of separation, is to bring myself back to spiritual truth. I do it in lots of different ways. One of them is by saying that quote from the Declaration of Principles. I can't say it without getting chills. I don't know about you guys, but I get chills. So Joel Goldsmith says this in the chapter Practicing the Presence. When we love our neighbor, we are loving God in action, and God appears as our neighbor. When we're loving our neighbor, we are loving God in action. So when I look out at something that I find intolerable, and I get a place where I can soften just that little bit and remind myself, this too is God, then I'm putting God into action. I'm creating a place where God can operate through my consciousness and out into the world as it goes out. And I never know where that will end. Every encounter, every face, every challenge, every relationship is an opportunity for me to recognize the divine in that form that's showing up in front of me. That's the good news and the bad news. So, as I said, sometimes it's more difficult than others. But the mystical heart doesn't separate things. When I can drop into my mystical heart, when I can drop into my heart space and soften just a little bit, there's a place for magic to happen. Because the mystical heart only knows oneness. It doesn't see any sense of separation. And so how do we begin to see through spiritual eyes? This is the magical part of it here. This is not about some kind of manipulation of outer effects, but it's a transformation of my perception. When I'm worked up about something, when I've gotten all triggered by an event that's happened or something that someone has said, and it happens a lot for me, when I get triggered by that, I always have an opportunity to transform my perception, to transform how I see it. Sometimes that transformation happens in me taking myself out of the situation because I'm too close to it. I can't get to that place of centeredness there. Sometimes that transformation takes weeks and weeks and weeks to happen because I'm too wrapped up in it. But always it's a work that I'm going through. It's looking at what I'm thinking about and how I'm reacting to it. This is the root of the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness, remember, has three things. We stay in the present moment. We're aware of what we're thinking. And then the hard one, we don't judge it. We don't react to it. It's what the Buddhists call equanimity. So presence, awareness, equanimity. If I can remember those things when I'm in that conflict situation in my life, when things are all worked up inside of me, I have an opportunity to soften my heart. And in that soft heart, things work better. Joel says it this way: when you can look upon the world and see through its appearances, whether it's sin, sickness, or lack, or limitation, and behold only God, you are practicing the presence. You are actively engaged in that mystical relationship with the divine. Practicing the presence means having that relationship. It means being in conscious union with Spirit. It means tapping into it however you feel it in your body, however you feel it in your life, touching it, tapping into it, and allowing it to guide and direct the actions that you have. So this is the real magic here. It's the heart can only see with our spiritual eyes. And it transforms everything that it beholds through this mystical, magical awareness. And so some of the ways that we do this is we don't pray for things to change. We behold the presence as it already is. Ernest Holmes said it this way: there's nothing to be healed, only the truth to be revealed. We don't have to fix things. We just have to find the underlying truth. We don't have to solve the problem. We have to recognize that Spirit is present right there. It is active in each person. It's active in the situation. We don't seek to make people better. We are not about fixing folks. We behold the Christ that is already within them. And remember, the Christ means the illumined one, the person who has awakened to the presence of the divine within them, who has that conscious union with Spirit, who has that mystical connection with the divine of their own understanding. We don't seek to fix life. We seek to reveal the wholeness that's already present. If we believe in these principles, and we believe that God is already there, and we believe that God is perfect, then what is there to fix? It's simply an opportunity for us to recognize it at a deeper level. This is what the mystics call the alchemy of the awakened heart. And that's the power to see God where others can only see imperfection. The power to say, this too is God. The basis of all this is that power of unity and that idea of oneness. That is the bridge between everything. That is the bridge between what we see as problems and understanding the wholeness and the perfection of the divine. It's bringing those together and finding that way that we can move from the reality of what we're experiencing into that greater sense of awareness. Our theme for this month is connecting hearts. And it calls us to really understand the power of this unity. The power that we are all connected in one way or another. I was reading an interesting story about a young man who worked on clocks. And he's working on a clock one day, and his finger starts to twitch, like this. And he picks up the phone, and he calls his mother and says, "Would you stop worrying? You've got me all shaky." Because every time his mother got worried about something, he had a physical reaction to it. Now, the interesting part about this is they were in different states. One was in one state, the other one was in another one. Not states of consciousness, but physical states in the United States. We've heard lots of scientific studies done where people are praying for a group in one location and they have a healing in another location. The one I studied in ministerial school that I found most interesting was there was an outbreak, I can't remember, I think it was a flu, a really bad flu, happened in this one particular hospital. And so they got the records of all the people who had been affected by that. And they had people praying for those people who had been affected. And then they went back and they looked at the records again, and the records had changed. Now, here's the interesting part, is the people who had had the flu was 50 years before the people started praying. But there was a change because of this power of consciousness. As I said, it transcends time. It transcends location. There is a oneness that exists in this universe that transcends all of that and that is available to us. I believe this is why when some people pray to certain deities or certain saints that have been long dead, they have a realization or they have a healing. They have something transform in their lives because it doesn't matter about time and space. Those are human constructs. They're not divinely ordained. And so what is, whoops, sorry, hit too far. Come on, quit. It's like moving all over the place there. So what is this idea of mystical love? It is that idea that we are part of this oneness. We are part of this energy that transcends time and space. Justin showed you some beautiful pictures of the ocean. It's the realization that we are a drop in the ocean, but we are also the entire ocean. That there's no separation between that drop and the rest of the ocean. And that ocean has existed throughout the time of this planet. Transcends time, it transcends space. It is a power that moves through each one of us and it connects us in that oneness. Joel says this in Practicing the Presence. We cannot love our neighbor until we see God as the reality of our neighbor. Then we do not love them as persons. We love them as God appearing. It's hard to like or even tolerate some of the actions of people that we see. If I was to base my love only on that, I would not spend a lot of time in love. But if I can base my love on them appearing as God in action, to whatever degree they realize it, then I have a whole different experience. Now, Joel talks about the veil being very thick with some people, or young souls, old versus old souls. And so for some people, it takes many, many lifetimes for them to have the realization of unity or oneness, or even God. And so until they have that realization within themselves, their veil is very thick. They can't see through spiritual eyes. And so they behave in ways that I don't agree with. They behave in ways that are detrimental to themselves and others around them. They seek power versus unity and wholeness. They spend more time with greed and anger and fear because they haven't had that realization of spirit yet. But if I can realize it within myself, then perhaps there's a place for it to be realized within each other, for other people out there. So Joel doesn't just describe this idea of mystical love. He invites us to practice it. And so some of the ways that we can practice it is to pause and recognize God in everyone. Here's an easy way for you to do that. This is how I started years ago. I was very bothered by people that were on the street corners asking for money. It bothered me that I couldn't give them money, and it bothered me that they had those conditions in their lives. And so I began a practice of looking at the people, smiling at them, and then I would sing this little Karen Drucker song in my head. You may have heard it before. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. And I would do that as I smiled at the people. And most often I'd get a smile back. I was recognizing people and practicing this idea of oneness, that this too is God. And so when you're in the store and you see somebody arguing, or you've got a clerk that's not very pleasant, say that to yourself. You are the face of God. Or this too is God. You don't have to say it out loud. It's in our consciousness, and it transcends everything else. This is what Joel suggests we say. Come on. I behold the Christ as you. You and I are one in spirit. I behold the Christ as you. This silent recognition of the divinity that we see outside of ourselves dissolves the sense of separation. It begins by dissolving it inside of us. And that gives it a place to operate. The next thing we can do is we can begin to see through appearances. In ministerial school, I took a class called Practical Applications of the Science of Mind. And in there, we were given awful situations, and we had to describe how God showed up there based on our science of mind principles. And so I began to learn to look for those things in situations, to look for the ways in which Spirit is showing up. It has helped soften me through a lot of things. Joel says we can say this. This too is God in disguise. It is calling me to see through the veil. This too is God in disguise. This is not about reacting to situations, but allowing the truth, the spiritual truth, to be revealed within yourself. I would suggest not saying it out loud. Not everybody can hear it, or they don't have the ears to hear it at this point. And so sometimes when you are in a bad situation, you say this too is God, you might get a reaction. And the final thing is to abide in the presence. Many of our spiritual saints and sages throughout time have had an idea of practicing the presence. Practicing the presence, being consciously aware of the presence of the divine in every situation. That it's moving through me, that it's showing up as me, that it is in everyone that I greet, whether they realize it or not. If I know it's there, that gives it a place to operate. Joel says this, be still and let the realization of God's love flow through you. Then, without words or deeds, you bless the world. This isn't about going out and proselytizing and trying to convince anybody else. It's about doing our own internal work allowing the presence to come alive inside of us. Practicing the presence is more powerful than any other action we could ever do. And practicing the presence will lead us to the right and appropriate actions that we do need to do. We will be motivated to provide assistance where we can, or to leave the situation if we need to. When we abide in the presence, we allow space for that mystical, magical heart to bless everybody by just being there. To just being that place where God shows up. Joel says, love is the realization of oneness. When you love, you are acknowledging that there is only one life, and that life is God expressing. When we realize this, then that idea of oneness ceases to be a goal that we strive for, but it becomes our lived reality. When we can see the face of God in people we don't like, then we can actually begin to be a place where that lived reality of oneness shows up. We begin to see the sacred in everything. This mystical interweaving of our lives, our prayers, our breath. Everything becomes connected. Everything becomes tied in that unity. And that's the real magic. When love becomes our way of seeing, our way of being, and our way of living, that's when we are practicing that mystical, magical heart. All right, let's take this into prayer. Oh, thank you. I invite our practitioners to stand. Join us. These wonderful people who support us throughout all of their knowing the truth for us at all times. If you haven't had an opportunity to have prayer with one of our practitioners, I really suggest you try it. And if that is a little too intimidating, please at least consider putting in a prayer request, because these beloved people hold you in prayer throughout the week. Again, it transcends time and space. So let somebody know the truth for you. So I invite you to just close your eyes, settle into your seats, take in a deep breath. Make yourself available to the presence of the divine. And so I know that right here and right now there is only one power, one presence, one creative love intelligence that has brought forth everything into existence. I know this one as God. I know it is the very essence of my being. I know that it lives in my heart, that it transcends every part of me and shows forth in everything that I do. Because I know that I am one with this power and presence, I know that each and every one of us is. That we are all that unique, perfect, and divine emanation of a love so powerful, it needed to create more and more and more of itself. And as I look out, I see it beautifully manifested before me. In all of its glory and all of its perfection. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word. I know that right here and right now, there is a oneness that is alive in each and every one of us. There is a unity that transcends any need for separation, that dissolves any apparent differences, that eliminates boundaries and barriers, and sees only wholeness and perfection revealing itself perfectly in front of our eyes. I know that this one is simply waiting for a place to operate in this world. And I know that our opportunity is to allow it to move through us. Whenever we are faced with any challenge or difficulty, that is a place for God to be. That is a place where God is in action as a benefit and a blessing to all who come near. And I know that this idea of oneness and this practicing the presence is how we begin to change the world around us. It is how we allow God a place to be. I'm so grateful to know this. I'm so grateful to feel it happening right now. I'm so grateful to see it expressing itself as this powerful and amazing community. And I simply release this word into the law, into that creative mind that knows no limit. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is.